But this is much bigger, Wooly, than player welfare. We've all friends that are in this critical 6%. And we've all aged, I'm past this now, but an awful lot of GAA players have aged parents. So you may be all right, and you may go away and play, and you may go and train, but what are you bringing home? And they're the critical people.
I'm not finished yet. It took me a long time to get here.
Both players have spoken with each other.
So that's it, lads. Taoiseach Leo Varadkar has confirmed this morning that outdoor gatherings more than 500 are not permitted. And the GAA is expected to deliver a statement today. Tom Ryan did deliver that statement, but he kind of pushed the boat on a little bit to this afternoon, said he's going to meet with the government. I don't know what they have to meet about, because they've been very clear about gatherings more than 500 not being permitted. Schools have been cancelled, creches have been cancelled. We had Ger Brennan on the football show saying the universities are obviously cancelled. He's off work as of now. Brian Carroll, you've got your feet up there, you've a pina colada in your hand, and you're you're taking it easy. You're off work now for 2 weeks, at least 17 days.
Yeah, we're scrambling now to put plans in place for the kids over the next couple of weeks. But look, it's a big worry, I suppose, for the Leaving Cert kids more than anybody. Wondering will the Leaving Certs go ahead or anything. But look, they'll definitely go ahead all right. But how much actual school or contact time that's going to happen over the next number of weeks, it's very hard to see it, being honest.
Well, that's the thing I was thinking, 2 weeks. What's 2 weeks going to do? Because the incubation period is 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks' time, cases will have either exploded or they'll have receded, but there will still be cases. So reopening the schools in 2 weeks, to me, is completely illogical anyway. So we could be looking at a more extended kind of break.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, being honest. There's, on the official holidays, there's only 1 week of term left in 2 weeks' time until 2 week Easter break. So I can envisage that it'll be closed for at least 5 weeks, being honest, until after the official Easter break. And they'll obviously have a much better idea in 5 weeks' time whether they'll be able to open then or not.
Yeah, Jesus, it's hard to know, isn't it, Cheddar?
Yeah, and it's a bit disappointing, Willie, to be honest with you, because it's not as if hasn't been precedents around the world on this. Yeah. We all know this. We don't need to go over this in terms of. But look, this has been going on in China for a while, in Italy for a while, and I do agree with Brian. I don't see schools being back before the summer break, Brian, to be honest with you. If we look at the other countries and where they are and the length of time it is taken to contain this, and I suppose it's not just containment now, we're in aggressive measures now to actually curb it. It's only in the last couple of days, and I know they're not, you cannot compare like with like here in terms of where it was in Wuhan in China, and in fairness we don't know enough about it to be able to comment on it, but if we just look at it at a very, very high level, it's only in the last couple of weeks that numbers started to recede. That's been there since December. That's 3 months ago. So I can't see it happening, and I have a huge amount of sympathy for Leaving Cert and exam students in that. It is a pressure time for them, and it is the gateway to their working life and all of those things. And I think we should all sort of look out for them and do the best we can for them. And Brian, I'd be interested in actually, I know the teaching practice and process and all of that has moved on an awful lot now to online teaching and all of that. And is that an option in schools? And I don't want to go on a separate adjunct here on the show, but I wonder, is that an option in schools?
It is an option, but it's a lot more difficult to actually carry out on the ground, because there isn't a huge amount of investment in ICT. And obviously ICT in people's individual homes, so it's not really the done thing at second level. It is an awful lot more accessible in third level, so you can see why the likes of Trinity and the other universities now are moving towards an online platform and being able to deliver their lectures through Skype or whatever other medium they're able to. But in second level, that access just isn't there at the moment, and the investment hasn't been there, and I suppose it's something that hasn't really been tapped into. While there's an awful lot more done in terms of providing notes online, many different platforms there, the actual delivery of lessons hasn't really been widely used at second level. So it is a big issue, and even the department are slow on actually bringing out guidelines in that perspective as well. The current directive is actually just to prepare work for the next 2 weeks, and a lot of that on a very, very, I suppose, macro level is just to be able to buy time and see where they're at over the next couple of weeks and try and figure out what the long-term plan is from that perspective.
Yeah, it seems to be a buying time kind of measure. Definitely from a GAA point of view, the Dublin County Board have cancelled all all club fixtures. Antrim as well. Who else was it, Brian?
Meath.
Meath have too. Look, these lads, the big question here is there will be no supporters at games this weekend. I think that's very, very obvious. The government have said it, Cheddar. It's whether these games go ahead behind closed doors or not is probably the question. And are we looking at the welfare of players by asking them to play, or is it high risk? You'd be looking at 2 squads of 30. You'd be looking at, a lot of them not intermingling, only the players on the field kind of, coming across each other, and not all 30 coming across each other. Is it a player welfare issue to ask them to play, or would it be okay to go behind closed doors for another couple of weeks and run off the league?
Well, I think, Willie, my answer to that is don't answer it, because I'm not qualified to answer it. There's a huge amount of issues here. Clearly, we've moved away now from containment measures into aggressive measures, which is not dissimilar to where maybe Italy is. So we're really only just going on people on the outside commenting on this. I think there's been a huge amount of people commenting on social media that are very unhelpful here. So I'm not going to give a huge amount of comment on this, but I'll just say this of what I know. Look, there's a lot of issues here. Even in terms of jerseys, water bottles, there has been advice given down by the GAA yesterday about the use of water bottles and
bring your own one,
and bring your own and different things like that. But look, there's a whole lot of other issues here as well. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who were at a training session, and a player took off his top and wiped his nose and then handed it over to somebody. Didn't think what they were doing. Totally innocent here. But there's a huge amount of issues here that just haven't been looked at. And what are the issues? And this is much bigger, Uli, than player welfare. We've all friends that are in this critical 6%, and we've all aged. I'm past this now, but an awful lot of GA players have aged parents. So you may be all right, and you may go away and play, and you may go and train, but what are you bringing home? And they're the critical people. And I'm gobsmacked, to be honest with you, Wooly, that Tom Ryan's going to speak to the government, because I'm going to be very, very straight here. The government have flip-flopped around this already, and we're going to go to them to look for advice. Why can't the GA take the lead in this and stand up on their own 2 feet and say, we're a community organisation here, and we're going to help out our own community, and we're going to look at what we can do. But this is a threat to Irish people and to the people that are around us. What can we, as an organisation that prides itself in being a community organisation, do for the area that's around us here, rather than running to a government and looking for advice on this? And I'll copper fasten that, Wooly. We spoke last week here about the medical people that we trust within our organisation. Let's trust those people as well, and give the advice to us, and let us all put the shoulder to the wheel here and sort this out on behalf of our society.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I do think that people individually need to accept responsibility as well. So people listening to this, if you're planning on going slobbering around Dublin, around packed pubs all day, Paddy's Day, and the parade might be cancelled, but you're not doing anybody any good. And the point Cheddar made is that you'll be fine, you're young and you're fit, but your parents might not be fine and your grandparents might not be fine. And if you're happy to live with bringing that back into your house because you want to have a good weekend out, on the beer slobbering, that's on you. That's on you.
And that's the point, William, I'm making, that we are a community organisation. We can get that message across brilliantly, and we can go that step further. Clearly, looking at the evidence in other countries, this is going to get worse, and it's probably going to get worse quickly, and it's going to be, a serious critical risk to a fair cohort of people, pretty close to ourselves here. Can the GAs, not wait? Why are we waiting for flip-floppers here who didn't sort out the problem in the first place? And look at this ourselves and work together on this. And for example, in the bigger picture, what's the bigger picture here? There's going to be need for distribution of medicines. There's going to be a need for distribution of food. We all know aged people around the rural areas. We know where to live. We can do the survey within our own club areas to find out that. How can we help? I even go even a stage further. We all obviously have friends on the HSC side, and we know some of the things that they're looking at the minute in terms of isolation units and chambers, and they're looking at different locations of that. Are our clubs' houses suitable for that? These are extraordinary times. Yeah. This is not just something that's going to pass, and it affects everybody. So I think we've passed Woolley. You asked a question and you introduced this topic around can we play behind closed doors. I think we need to look at the really, really big picture first as an organisation and see how can we help. And then we need a plan around our games and a plan of how we can contain it within our own team training or whatever activities that we're about.
Yeah.
I don't see it at the minute and I'm disappointed about that.
Yeah, just get out of the denial stage, which I was in for a long time, looking at China thinking, this will never happen to us and this will never. The reality is you just need to look at Italy, and we're a few weeks behind Italy, and if you think what happened in Italy won't happen here, well then you're living in a dream world. And you've got no
just have to acknowledge though that the initial 3 county boards have made big decisions
very
there,
quickly,
and they've taken the lead on it.
Yeah.
And I that's where I would agree with Cheddar, and that express his disappointment that the GAA have kind of almost pushing it to this afternoon. And fair play to those county boards and any other ones that are making those decisions independent of the GAA.
Yeah.
And they're making that for the vast majority of people at the coalface. The people at the clubs, and you would expect that the GAA have to do the same for the inter-county game. That has to cease as well. And it'd be very, very disappointing if you see county boards at a much smaller level making these decisions and no club games allowed played and no trains allowed, but the county board or the county teams are allowed to continue to play and train. Like, that just doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever. So you would hope that by the end of business today that the GAA will have followed suit.
Yeah,
agree with you, Brian. And again, I'd like to come in behind you, Brian, and I'd applaud those 3 counties for decisive leadership on this problem.
Yeah, very good.
Definitely.
To change the subject to a subject you won't want to talk about, Brian, we have to talk about Offaly Antrim. And Jesus, that was some kick in the arse for Offaly to play so well and be ahead and look like they're going for a good result, and to be hit by 2 goals in injury time like that. Like, number one, that's probably their own fault conceding the goals, but there is a talking point after the game was the 2 minutes extra on top of the 6 that the referee played. Now, I was reading a couple of tweets since Monday's show, and people were saying it's good enough, didn't they? They got an All Ireland in '98 for because extra time wasn't played, and now they're giving out about more time being played. But the point is, and this is a bugbear of mine, Brian, and we haven't spoken too much of it on the hurling show, but I covered it extensively on the football show. Is the extra time that referees add on in extra time, and it's completely disproportionate to the extra time they add on in the normal 35 minutes. So in the normal 35 minutes, there might be 6 minutes added on, but then in the 6 minutes there could be 2 or 3 minutes added on, almost half that time. And my point is that referees are stopping to watch much more in the extra time than they are in normal time, and players aren't sure what's the clock being stopped for in the extra time and what it's not being stopped for.
Yeah, I was on RT on Monday morning actually talking about this, and this is far from sour grapes, trust me. Offaly were very unlucky. They looked to have done everything right. They'd only conceded 5 points in that second half, only 1 from play, and Antrim played with the wind. It's a harsh lesson for them to lose and hurl to the final whistle. And for the vast majority of people at the game, they acknowledged that there probably was a couple of stoppages during the additional time that led to the 78 minutes being played. But the issue is that the only person in the ground, whether it's in Croke Park or O'Connor Park or wherever, if it's in a club gate ground, the only person that's in the know is the referee.
Yeah.
And that's not good enough in this day and age, especially when we know in other sports, and even here in Ireland with ladies football, we can see that there is a clock that is used, the stop clock, and everyone knows in the ground how long is left and what you're playing towards. And I just find that really frustrating that the GAA have buried their head in the sand in this regard. And it's something that I would love to see them trial. They go on about trial and loads of things, and this is a real thing that needs to be introduced. The referees come in for huge criticism, and this is one where we can actually help them so easily and take that onus off the referees so they can concentrate on the field of play and any indiscretions that are happening there and the rules of the game without having to worry about the time. And at least there's clarity for players, management, supporters. And you stop those situations where you almost feel like referees are playing for a draw, because that was this sense, after the game today. We saw that in the club football All Ireland. We saw it in Dublin Monaghan in the National Football League, where you just feel like the referee, look, he's going to give him one more chance, and if you have that hooter or whatever way you want to describe it, like in rugby or whatever, at least everyone's in the know, there's clarity about it, And as I said, it's very simple fix for this sort of thing.
It seems to be, and it works pretty well in the women's. I don't watch that much of the women's game to know how well it works. It only seems to, the ones you see it are in the big All-Ireland finals, which, you watch. But there is one thing, Cheddar, against the stop clock, and I would be for it, is that you're just after watching an unbelievable All-Ireland, say Kilkenny and Tipperary in a classic, and there's a point in it and the time's about to run up and Tipperary have one more attack and everybody in the whole ground knows that this is their last attack and the buzzer goes off as the puck out. Do you know what I mean? Where you'd love to see them getting that one chance.
Can I cut across that one for a second? Because to me there's a simple fix in that, and it's like what rugby do. It might go beyond in the 80 minutes in rugby, but it might go beyond the buzzer until the ball goes out of play.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a simple fix on that. No,
fair enough. That's answer that one, Cheddar. That does seem fair, because there would be something kind of unjust about someone shooting for a point to draw an All-Ireland final and the buzzer going off.
Yeah. I think there's pros and cons for it, Wooly. I think the pros far outweigh the cons. It works brilliantly in ladies football, and it actually adds to the spectacle. And as you're coming down the straight, it certainly hypes up everybody. There's great buzz around the place because people know where it is. And I fully agree with Brian. The problem is not that there's 8 minutes. The problem is that people don't know, and particularly players don't know, and everybody doesn't know, and then everybody's hyped up. I think if it was quite clear what time was left, even if it was 10 minutes, that's not the issue. The issue is that where do I stand? What can I do next?
Exactly.
The one downside I would see to it is that if it's quite clear where the finishing line is in terms of the clock, it may introduce a little bit of cynicism towards the end of the game. But look, you certainly, I don't want to go back to last week.
That's happening anyway.
And Brian and the black cards and all of that crap. And thankfully enough of people spoke against that.
But it's funny, Cheddar,
that's the one point I would make about it, Wooly, that I think if and Brian's right, look, it could be looked at and people could trial it and speak to the LGFA referees and just see how they feel about it. It's certainly, I think the pros far outweigh the cons, but that's only one that I might see.
Yeah, it's funny, the women's game, it just stops, doesn't it, Brian? It's just like they're on the attack and it just stops. There's something a bit heartbreaking about that, though, isn't there? And almost like demoralising for the team. There's 20 seconds left and they've a kick out and they almost know we're not going to even get the ball down the field at this stage.
It's almost like the American football where they nearly walk across the field and shake hands.
Like if there's 10 seconds left and you're after getting the ball in your own full back line, you might as well drop the ball and shake hands. You're gone unless in hurling you're okay. In hurling you're okay. I'm thinking Gaelic football.
But the one thing I see in ladies football sometimes is that there might be a bit of keep ball towards the end of a game.
Yeah.
But you kind of seen that creeping in football, in men's football as well. Teams will hold on to, where that's not really possible in hurling. It's very high risk to have that keep ball situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they just seem to hurl out to the whistle anyway, even if you are getting hammered. They still seem to play it out. So that would be the only thing. But I just think it's something that can be trial, and I do think that little fix of until the ball goes out of play, I think that's a nice way of actually trying to counteract that thing you're talking about.
I'd agree with that, Brian. And I think the other counter argument, Willie, you have 60 minutes to go win the match. It's not won in the last minute. People need to accept that as well.
Okay, brilliant stuff.
And I think it would take pressure off the referees, Brian. I meant to come in behind that point. I think anything that takes pressure off the referees without taking away their power to referee the game, and I don't think that the timing of the game has anything to do with it. I think a lot of referees would be delighted if that was actually done.
Yeah, and I suppose the big televised games are the ones that would be, like, this wouldn't be done in the club games. They would just continue on as normal unless.
Well, I don't see why you wouldn't. I don't see why you wouldn't, Brian. I don't know your view on that, but I don't see why you wouldn't. This is not, there's no great expense on this. This is just simply putting up an electronic clock that people can see around the stadium.
And an operator, I suppose. In the county grounds. It could be done.
But for most big games, whether it's club or county semi-finals, there's a fourth official there anyway. So all these big games, it's easily done. You know what I mean? The one thing as well in rugby is you never, it's stopping at 80. You never know how long the game stopped for. That 40 minutes that we're talking about in the second half, that could have ran for 50, 55 minutes, with all the stoppages in rugby. Whereas in hurling, I think the issue is that we're looking at it going, oh, it's 6 minutes extra time, that's a joke, you know, that kind of way. And
I get you. Yeah, you never know what extra has been played.
You never know what it is. It's just
stopping,
stopped. Yeah, the clock stops, and you're playing to the 80, you're playing to the 70 in hurling and football, obviously.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have that issue of it's a disgrace to play 6 minutes extra. You know that kind of way.
They've a lot more patience, rugby supporters. You'd be watching a scrum there and it collapses, and then they'll all set up again, and they'll go lock again, and then that falls back down, and then I'm not sure. There could be.
We're getting them in rucks though in hurling.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah,
definitely...
throw it in again. Yeah, they could say that about the hurling, right? Antrim Kerry, lads, is in Croke Park. That's a nice little touch for Antrim and Kerry, not to rub in the fact that Offaly aren't there, Brian. But 1 o'clock. It's before the Dublin and Meath game. So again, a nice experience for them, Cheddar, and a nice little reward.
Yes, and I've said it a number of times in the last couple of years that playing in Croke Park, particularly for these counties, you just didn't get a chance. Incredibly, I know when I was involved with Laois, I think Matthew Whelan had been playing with Laois for maybe 10 years at that stage, and had given unbelievable service. And I actually don't think he ever played in Croke Park, with the exception of getting back there last year. So it is a great thing to do. You know, it's our national stadium. Every Gaelic player and certainly every county player should have the opportunity of playing there at some stage. And I think it is a good big boost. But I think it's much more important than that, Willie, to be honest with you. That's sort of things that you would expect from your players. But Kerry and Antrim, if they're going to build on where they are, and going to come into a Leinster Championship, if you have real ambition about yourself, you're going to have to decide, I want to get in and play in Croke Park, and I want to go in here at the top, and that may be a Leinster semi-final or something like that, or whatever it is. So you should have that ambition about yourself as a team, and they're certainly developing teams. It's going to be an interesting game because I think Kerry were knocked back a little bit there recently. They were missing a couple of players, missing Shane Conway. Brian, you might correct me if that was in the Offaly game. They were missing Shane Conway, but they were certainly missing.
No, it was actually the Kerry Antrim game.
Sorry,
and Antrim beat them.
That's correct.
6
yes,
points.
That's the match. So they're I'd expect them that they're back at full strength now, and Kerry have improved year on year, and that certainly that game's going to go down to the wire.
Yeah, definitely. And the point, the credit I want to give to Croke Park and to the CCCC or whoever fixtures them or makes the fixtures is that last year I think they had Westmeath and Kerry down in Cusack Park in Ennis. That's correct, on a terrible day. And we give out about them enough to say that to put that on in Croke Park before the Meath Dublin game, it's a very good thing that they've done, and it's a very logical thing. And sometimes we give out about them for not being logical, and gives the 2A or the 2B teams the credit that they deserve.
It certainly is, and I have to say
2A, sorry.
Yeah, no, 2A, but fair play and very lucky. Brendan Cummins was on Sunday League last Sunday night, and he highlighted it first and foremost. So, whether the CCC were going to do it or not, the pressure was certainly on them to produce when Brendan Cummins came out with that statement on Sunday night. So, again, credit where it's due. The right thing is done here, and they deserve their opportunity to play in Croke Park. And I remember you did an interview with Joe Quaid after that league final last year, and he was very scathing at that. And as a show, we were too. Because the Division 1 final was in Croke Park. I know it ended up doubling up with the football final, but there was nothing stopping a triple header that particular day as well. Because all the football finals tend to be in Croke Park. So I think it's only right that they get their opportunity. So fair play on that one.
Yeah, exactly. So this final talking point has been a bugbear of mine anyway. So I want to hear, because Don Logue Cusack has thrown another kind of side of it, and maybe it's him I should be arguing with, or it depends and see what you think of this. It's like I've been complaining about.
I think you'll know the answer to this one.
I've been complaining about this National League, lads. I've been complaining for the fact that managers don't seem upset after the game. There's a lack of intensity in a lot of the games. There's nothing seems to be at stake. There's no relegation issues for any of the big teams. And it's just lacking something, and it's the second biggest competition, and it runs for 2 months, and you'd like to see more at stake. Now, Donald Cusack last week on League Sunday, he was asked about that, and he said, is that not what the league should be? It's your secondary competition. Look at it from a playing point of view. The skills are no less. The players are enjoying it. They're expressing themselves. It does suit the management. You can blood players. You can get you can get ready for the championship. Who are the other key stakeholders? The media. They don't seem to be talking any less about the game. If you judge by the amount of podcasts that are out there talking about it, the crowds, he said, I don't know the exact numbers, but I don't think they're down. The interest is still there. That's another view of a Cheddar. It would be complete opposite of my view on it. Like, I mean, the way I look at it with Donald Cusack, and that's okay, this is only new. If this league continues like this in 5 years' time, will people start getting bored of not top level sports? Something has to be at stake, or else it's the Walsh Cup.
I think for this year, Donald is probably right in some of the things he says, but it's still a slow bicycle race.
Yeah,
it's turned into a slow bicycle race in comparison to what it was for the last couple of years, and there's no argument about that. I think if Donald was asked, is this flat to the mat for every team in all of these games, in comparison to the way it was for the last couple of years, I think he'd have to be honest and say no, it's not. And I think his answer more or less says that if it's a secondary competition where managers, blood players, and so on, I think the big argument was with the top teams was, well, we didn't have a chance to blood players in the last couple of years because it was flat to the mat.
It's gone from one extreme to the other.
Let's just be honest and call it for what it is. It is a slow bicycle race at the minute, and people need to be wary. Is that going to, charge up, people's interest in the games and so on. You'll always have diehards like myself who go to 2 or 3 matches a week, and whether they were playing backs and forwards, they'd still probably go to it. But clearly it's not to the same level. And it brings it back to the question, Wooly, why was the decision made in the first place? And how come 4 or 5 of the top counties could force this based purely on the fact that we're asked to be super competitive here in the league, and now it's detrimental to our championship ambitions a little bit later on in the year. Pure and simple, let's not hide around that fact, because they actually said it. And it was hugely detrimental, of course, to Westmeath this year, for example. I think, again, look at the bigger picture here. And Donald, maybe you were asked, a straight question and you simply answered the question. But look at the bigger picture here in terms of the development of the game. And if it is a secondary competition, it's not a secondary competition to develop the game in the top 5, 6, 7, 8 counties. It should be a competition to develop the game maybe in the next 6 counties, and with a view to maybe having a 12 or 14 or whatever we decided to be championship from here on in. But let's not hide behind that. This is what it is. And certainly if you look at some of the matches last Sunday, there were no consequences. Waterford knew they were in an All-Ireland quarter, or in a league quarter.
He made a load of changes.
Number of changes, and that's fine. If I was a manager of Waterford, I'd love that, because you have an opportunity of looking at some players and all of that. But the bigger picture here is, was it competitive to the extent that it mattered? Well, clearly it didn't.
Yeah.
Now, look, you could still have that situation in even the previous years. You could still have that situation, but it was certainly an awful lot more competitive, and games really had a consequence.
Yeah, but you look at it, Waterford Limerick was more of a reflection of the 5 games before that, or the 4 games before that. The one that actually did count for something was Galway Tip, Brian, and that was a clearly much better game with something riding on it, and you could clearly see the difference in a game that had something riding on it and a game that didn't have something riding on it.
Oh, 100%. And look, being honest, I was extremely disappointed when I heard Donald come out with that.
Is he cheerleading to the point there where he can't even see what's very obvious to people?
We see, look, I don't know. We come at it from a different base, I think, on this show. We probably see the bigger picture because we come from counties that are not the traditional powerhouses of the game, and we see the importance of trying to grow the game in every county. I honestly, and I've said this a lot of times, the analogy I keep using is they are climbing the ladder and pulling it up after them. That's my issue with it. Of course it suits the bigger teams where they get to experiment and have the players. Do you think Laois and Carlow and Westmeath got to experiment? They did in their eye, they were flat to the mat in every single game and probably were still shipping big beatings. We've said this time and time again, the previous league worked really well. 1A and 1B, and the 1B had almost a mini league within it, and we would have had a fantastic league there between Laois, Westmeath and Carlow, I think there. Fantastic the way it was. And I agree with you. I think there has to be something on the line. I don't care what level of sport it is. And it's not just hurling here. There has to be something riding on this, and It is disappointing to hear comments like that from such a big person in the game, and it's a very narrow view, I think, on where the game is and how we can continue to grow the game in every county.
It is, yeah. And like even a comment like the skills are no less, the players are enjoying it, they're expressing themselves. Sure, that could apply to a puck around in the park. Like, I mean, this is the National Hurling League.
Yeah, sorry to come across there as well. Like, my issue on that is there was no counter argument on that. That was Donald Lockhart finished that whole conversation on RTE. And it was a very, very one-way view on that. And that really frustrated me that he got to sit there and say that. And, a lot of people can take that as gospel almost, So I was really frustrated hearing that.
In fairness, there are time restrictions to give Joanne, her dues, that she wouldn't be shy about pulling people up and things. But like, it is difficult on shows like that to potentially take something on if you're wrapping up.
No, and I agree. I my leg should come in there, Brian, on that. Really what Don Logan's saying is, look, Westmeath, you'll be cannon fodder in this, and it'll be somebody else next year and somebody else, because it'll never be us that's going to go down to 2A ever again. Yep. That's what they're really saying here. So, we can do how we want to do it here, and as Brian has captured it perfectly, we can pull up the freaking ladder behind us here, and to hell with the rest of you, we'll chuck you around the place as cannon fodder here just to keep this thing going. Yeah,
okay, pulling the ladder up after yourselves in a slow bicycle race, they're the two takeaways I'll take from this National League. Alright, we'll come back and we'll look at some of the games. Alright lads, the quarter final, I'll do that again. Alright lads, the quarter final that we want to start off with is Wexford and Galway. This is in Wexford Park. Arguably, it's hard to actually pick which is the bigger of the two games, because the two of them are very big games in their own right. Three Leinster teams, only one Munster team. I don't know what we say about that, because the two Munster teams are waiting in the semi-final. So we'll start off with Wexford Galway anyways. And Brian, I don't know how impressed you were with Galway. We were talking about it here on Monday, myself and Damien, but there was a very clear, obvious game plan. 2-man full forward line, lovely diagonal balls, get it in early. Well, obviously in the second half when they had the wind, and because there's no Johnny Glynn, there's no Joe Cooney, this is the way Shane O'Neill now has seen the players he has available to him, and this is what he's come on. And we saw a bit of a pattern to their play.
We did, and look, we actually spoke about this 2 weeks ago and seen would they actually target these home games, and that's exactly what they did. And they brought a lot of their players back into the fold over the last couple of weeks. Mightn't have played all the game, but they've seen game time now over the last couple of games, and as you said, a pattern of play has started to emerge, and it's a very enticing one from a Galway perspective. Look, we know they've players and loads of them. When you see Brian Kilcannon, though, really, I know he's been there the last couple of years, but he's really starting to put his hand up now. Conor Whelan coming back into that real imperious form as well, and they can be a force to be reckoned with if they can get everyone on the field. So Shane O'Neill would be quite happy now the way that league has worked out. I know the fixture being changed, the Galway tip one ended up being 2 home games in a row. That really suited them. And they will be happy now having drawn Wexford down there as well, because it is a dry run from Shane O'Neill's perspective. I know the players might be used to it, but from Shane O'Neill and his management backroom perspective, it's a dry run for the way it's set up in the championship as well.
Davey was at the game, Cheddar, so the one criticism here I had of Tipperary on Monday was how the hell did it look at the two lads inside destroying him for that long, and Paddy Maher was trying his best to get back, but he was playing an orthodox centre-back position. We know Davey's not going to look at that. He's had fair warning, and it's going to be a 3-on-2 situation for the two lads in there.
That's what's going to be really interesting about this, I think. I think the other interesting thing was that, Galway didn't play with that third person. Oftentimes they played with maybe 4 along the half-hour line. From what I could see, I wasn't at the game. So that's going to be interesting. I think, looking at the mix of their forwards, they seem to have got a good mix, but they're definitely going to play, it's going to be, pick the pass type play rather than just lump it in and work off a target man and that. And they have, I think Brian Concannon has proved himself to be, a tough individual as well. He certainly will fight for ball, and Conor Whelan, my God, what a work rate and what bravery and toughness. I think Brian, maybe you spoke on this last year, or somebody spoke on this last year about his strength, his just natural strength and his ability to be able to, take tackles, give tackles, ride tackles, and so on. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting as well that, how will that work? So if that's a diagonal ball, they're going to have to clear a sweeper. So now does Glynn and maybe Concannon play a little bit wider? Where does that ball go to? Because you need to be very precise, and you need to be very clever about the lines that you bring the ball up. Do you bring it up along the left sideline, and you're going to have to bring it a little bit further now to pop the ball over the sweeper, because that person's just going to be stepping back to mop that up. And the other side of that is, if Wexford win the ball in the full back line, they have an outlet now to carry the ball out of it, and that you need. So the person that you're playing out in the half-hour line, or somebody in that half-hour line, needs to be really, really quick to jump on the sweeper coming out with the ball, because Wexford are not going to let that ball go. They're not going to belt it up the field here.
Yeah.
So Galway are going to have to up, I suppose, the basic plan of what they're doing. But equally, Wexford are going to have to figure out what they're going to do with that as well. And bear in mind, the two of them are going to meet in the Leinster Championship. It is a little bit of a dry run here, and so I think, and I think Shane could do with the extra games. And, Wexford's team is pretty well set. The way they play is pretty well set. Of course, they're going to do some little different things just to throw the opposition after tail and that. But, you could probably predict reasonably what their team is going to be like and how they're going to play it and how they're going to play. Not so with Galway. And I think Shane probably maybe needs, and the winning brings momentum. We spoke about that a number of times on it as well. So I think extra games will be helpful to Galway. And, clearly they've the bit between their teeth. They set out. There was a sense of purpose about them last weekend about winning that match. It's just hard to judge it, Wooly, because I'd say Tip had 1 foot on the plane. I don't know. Did somebody tell me they were heading for a week in Spain for training?
They went on the Monday. And I was saying actually to Damien on Monday that last weekend was supposed to be the quarter-final weekend. So they were actually flying out. Did they have any intention of being in a quarter-final then? Do you know? Or were they going to go for a week before a semi-final like Limerick went?
They were, yes. They were. I mean,
they were planning on doing that.
These things are planned months in advance, Wooly, obviously.
Or maybe Liam Sheedy was like, lads, if we don't make a quarter-final, it's not the end of the world. We have that week, away or whatever. Like, and Tip looked like a team right throughout the league that didn't give two hoots whether they made anything.
They may have, Wooly, but they weren't beaten by a whole lot in a lot of games. They were very, very close in a lot of games, so they could have very well ended up in the quarter final. But I just make that point. They're a very, very experienced team with a number of All-Irelands now under their belt. I don't think you can sort of switch on and switch off, but if any team could do it at the minute, they can do it because of that level of experience. But it is a little bit risky, but they have a very, very experienced management and a very clued in management and a team, I suppose a management that the team have great confidence in at the minute. So I have no doubt that Tip can turn that around and go again.
Yeah, they weren't a clued in management with that two-man full forward line for the whole of a second half.
Well, they may not have need, don't.
Yeah, there could have been an element of they were actually just letting it ride.
Correct.
And seeing how they managed it on the field without actually counteracting it. So there's a lot of chess going on at the moment, and I agree with what Cheddar's saying there, definitely. A lot of these results do come with a little asterisk beside it.
Yeah. Come here, Brian, just on the point Cheddar made, and he said where the diagonal ball is coming from, you might need to work it up a bit further. And I think that's a great point, and it's something I'm always saying. If there's hang time on the diagonal ball, it's not when I say diagonal ball, I mean a good diagonal ball. You can if there's hang time on a diagonal ball from a right half back off down into the far corner forward, that's not a diagonal ball. When you say a diagonal ball, you mean it in a complimentary way, not in the literal way. Yeah. A diagonal ball is a low trajectory pass that a sweep it goes so fast and over a shorter distance that a sweeper can't get across to get the break off it. It's in the as Damien says, the 70-30 ball.
70-30, yeah.
Concannon all of a sudden now looked like he was able to win his own ball when that wouldn't be what he'd known for. It was because of the quality of ball, and that's something like throwing out diagonal ball all the time. I think it's misleading into what Limerick do. Brilliant diagonal balls. Yeah, do you get me? Kind of actually just throwing diagonal ball out for the sake of it because it goes across the field. I don't like that.
I think I fully agree with the point you're making, and there's probably no need to elaborate on that. But the thing for me, for Galway, that struck me in that second half was that as a group of players, and particularly the forwards, that put their hand up to say, we can do this, and probably we can do this without Joe Canning if needs must as well, because that is one stick that I have done it myself, that Galway have been beaten with over the last while anytime Joe's not available, they have looked, rather toothless up front. And as I thought, as a collective, they really put their hand up in that second half. And I thought they scored a couple of great goals, a couple of great finishes. And I heard a lot of people being, giving out about Brian Hogan in the goal. I actually thought, particularly Cotton Mannion's finish, I thought that was a brilliant finish. And anytime I've been coaching, I've been trying to coach forwards to do that. Hit the near post. Keepers expect you to go across them. They're almost gone. They take that step almost instinctively to go across, and there's certainly opportunities to hit it at the near post, and I think Cotton Mannion did that absolutely perfectly last Sunday. And just the glide across the ground, because Evan Island threw him out the hand pass and it looked like he might have been covered, but Mannion just put the afterburners on, and without even looking like he was sprinting, just tore away from the couple of Tipperary defenders. So I think, as a unit, that Galway forward line put their hand up. And the other thing I've noticed in the last couple of games is they are certainly attacking with more intent in terms of trying to get goals. If they get the ball inside that 40-metre zone, they're not taking the handy tap over points. They seem to be putting the head down and actually trying to work goals. Yeah,
isn't it interesting that he's had to devise a system around having smaller, less ball-winning forwards, Cheddar? Like, it's not, but Shane O'Neill's had a difficult job. Now, we're not saying they're the finished article. They just looked very good in the second half, and you could see a pattern to their play that suited their forwards, and all the things that would seem obvious to us talking on the show here seem to be kind of coming to the fore.
Yes, but again, I'd urge a little bit of caution about that, Willie. It was at a serious test. True. Certainly Wexford will be a serious test here. Look, you devise your game plan around the players, not the other way around. And look, this is what he has. I think what Brian's alluding to there is, in that way of playing, where does Joe fit in if he's a forward? That will be that will be interesting, because he certainly has to be fit in somewhere. So look, that's going to be an interesting one. I would just again maybe urge another little bit of caution that Galway have had a number of these type of players over the last 20-30 years. Superb, quick stickmen, and for some reason or other, just the whole part just didn't click for them, and haven't won All Irelands. They've had this, and they've shown this a number of times before. And I'd throw one other little thing: they had their own problems in their own full back line as well early on. So they're certainly not the finished article by a good bit, and we're judging that playing a Tipperary team that weren't really full on for the game anyway. I thought.
Well, you're wondering. I suppose the one question about Galway, while we're calling it a bit of a compliment at the start, if they start coming under pressure, who's their ball-winning forwards then? Like, Brian, who could if Skehill wanted to stick a bomb or two, like usually you want a few ball-winning puck-out catchers in your half-forward line. They don't seem to have them obviously now.
Yeah, well look, Joe Canning obviously is as good in the air as anyone. Cotton Mannion on his day. Jason Flynn's been playing half-forward as well there at the moment. You've Niall Burke didn't start the other day, so they have big men. So Conor Whelan's obviously
maybe Mannion using his pace not to land it on top of him, but to put it in front of him, I suppose. Yeah,
exactly, and he's brilliant to catch the ball out in front of him. Look, he's so tall as well. And his pace and moving onto the ball. So there's alternatives around it, and there comes a time where that just have simply to win their own ball, and it's about getting numbers. You actually mentioned that their full back line had their problems, and they certainly did. It's just interesting to see Adrian Toohey over the league has been playing out the field, out around midfield, and we know that he played. I know he was probably a makeshift, but he played a corner back when they won the All Ireland. So it is interesting to know that they have maybe pushing some of their players backwards to try and shore up in the full back line. I know Gerard McInerney is playing full back at the moment. It'll be interesting to see what they'll do with Dottie Burke when he returns. So again, they've loads of options. Sean Loftus has been thereabouts over the last number of years. So it's just about nailing down a spot. They've played Pádraig Mannion on the half back line. We know he used to play in the full back line. So as I say, Galway have options in abundance, but it's about getting, I suppose, all those players fitting into a unit and trying to actually work together.
But the half-back line looks settled. Mannion with Cooney, Burke, although Cooney went off injured. Damien reckons Morrissey, the cornerback, is a very good player. So it looks like he could be getting back in. It is starting to take a bit of shape. Wexford have got a good few injury issues. Lee Chin hamstring, Conor MacDonald has an Achilles issue, Rory O'Connor hamstring, Paul Morris hamstring. So Davey says the 4 players mentioned haven't participated in full training. Brian's laughing already. Now, well, to be fair, Rory O'Connor was taken off against Carlow after 41 minutes. Conor MacDonald came off that day as well, and Lee Chin didn't play at all. So there might be, I know exactly why you're laughing, but we know that Wexford, Davy doesn't hide from this kind of stuff. There's no shadow boxing with Davy. Davy wants to win the league, and he'd love to set fire to Galway coming down. So there's no doubt of what Wexford are going to bring to this, whether they have their full team out or not. Cheddar, I don't know if you're as cynical as Brian.
I know. I think some of them are clearly injured and have been for a while. It's not just for this game, but I do expect them all to be coming back now. They're probably all in rehab programs and so on. I think some of them have played some hurling already. Have got some game time on them, and clearly David would want to be getting them, together now, because look, there's only whatever it is, 8 or 10 weeks left of the championship. If it does go ahead, let's just take everything's going to go ahead here for the moment, and even though, look, they have their style well refined. I think we'll see some little additions in that from Davy and some more creativity within their team. Not a huge change in their setup, but you sort of need all of the players training and that to actually do that as well. Incidentally, Willie, you spoke up about the Galway half-back line, and I'd be a small little bit concerned about that. I think Shane Cooney and Fintan Burke are 2 big players. And look, Wexford could be the team to test them, because Wexford are going to drag you around the field a lot, and their half-hour line are going to be well out the field at different times, and then you could have a wing back scooting up the field past you, and suddenly you're completely out of position. I think of those 6 backs, they obviously need to start out the full back line after last Sunday, but even if they did, they started to depend a little bit on being tight at the back and being cohesive at the back. And of course, when you're playing Wexford, that's in the exact opposite happened, because you're dragged around the field by different players. And what do? Do you hold your formation back there, or do you go man to man, or what do you do? Or do you mark space, or do you mark go zonal marking, or what do you do? And it's an interesting argument, or an interesting discussion, because certainly for up to maybe about a year or 2 ago, everybody would have said keep your wing backs back, protect your corner back. But I think the quality of hurling has gone to such a level now that I'm not so sure that you can do that anymore, because people are able to ping accurately now 40, 50, 60 metres. So you holding the people a wing back in front of your half back line,
it's not going long.
You may be in no man's land, like the war zones. You may be in no man's land, so you're doing nothing here. And I think the idea now, when you look at big strong players as backs, I'm not so sure you will see 2 and 4. And I think Kilkenny are trying to do this at the minute. They're certainly looking at 2 and 4 being very, very mobile, because they've been caught out a couple of times with fantastic corner backs, but not quick enough to be able to play a bigger area in front of them. And traditionally you would have said, when you look back at the All-Ireland where Callan, and even look back at last year where Pat Horgan got out to the side, and that diagonal ball, that real precision diagonal ball that you were talking about, which is difficult to mark on the outside of the forward. Like, if you don't have really adaptable, flexible players that are very, very quick and very, very quick to get out to that ball first and then go front foot and actually to start the attack, you're now dependent on keeping your wing backs back. But that I'm not so sure that that's going to be an option anymore, the way the game is played, and just the dynamic running of different players around the field. And I think hurling is going to change a lot over the next couple of years than what we have known it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian, that you leave your half back line in position, and that's to cover your full back line, but your Wexford don't be launching them in anyway, so now you might be a spare part, and Wexford will just send their 2 corner backs that have ended up being spare. They'll send them up into the fray, so now you've got players marking a full forward line that it's not going to come to, and Wexford have extra men out the field who'd have no problem tapping it around to.
Yeah, and Wexford are unique that way. They do pose a completely different problem than most other teams, because the majority of other teams, while they might hold on to possession and all that, they still play along the lines of an orthodox type of game. Wexford have it down to a fine art. And Paddy Foley's, he and I suppose Matthew Hanlon, when he's playing half back line, as you said, they're breaking up the field. It's absolutely killing them. You know what I mean? And their sweeper is not necessarily your 7th defender either. They're getting up there. The cornerbacks are getting up, so it's very, very hard to counteract that. I've watched Limerick, so closely. Obviously, they're the team to watch. They tend to leave their half back line in place,
in
situ,
they do,
and even their full back line as well. They seem to be steadfast in that. Now the onus obviously there is on their half hour line midfield, drop deep, even sometimes leaving a 2-man full forward line, and everyone filters out.
But Brian, I suppose if Limerick are playing a Tipperary who are trying to get into their full forward line all the time because that's their strongest line, that makes sense. It all depends, I suppose, who you're playing against.
But that's why I think Wexford are I said that at the outset. Wexford are so unique in this perspective. I don't think any team out there at the moment is as probably far down the road of evolution of their game in terms of that spare man around that middle third as Wexford are, and their ability to hold on to ball, their ability to get different shooters in play, and that you've said it yourself, you said it to Davey, those defenders running from deep, very like football.
Yeah, he didn't admit that, did he? He didn't.
He didn't really, but I think because you were putting it out there for them, I think.
Shane O'Neill said after the game the last day, he said it goes back to what we've been looking for the last couple of weeks, just to have an unreal work rate, and I think the work rate was there again. And if ever that rings true, it's against Wexford, because you're tracking lads that don't have the ball, and that's the hardest thing for forwards especially to do, because your instinct, if someone has the ball, is to run after them. If he doesn't have the ball, your instinct is not always to run after them, and I'm sure in hurling, where these tactics are new enough, it's even less so.
Look, the work rate, I think we've heard that since Adam was a chap.
But Galway aren't known.
That's clearly given.
Galway aren't known for that hassling and harrying and tracking in groups like, say, Kilkenny are.
They were known, and their club hurling is really built around that.
But the inter-county team.
But I think the crucial thing there is the quickness in transition from you being an offensive player to you being a defensive player. And that we're talking about actually tracking, and that's when you're on the ball and off the ball. I think is where it really, really is. And of course, if your players are dynamic, they're moving up and down the field, you're not really, you may not be marking somebody, but you better be able to cover that person. And, there's huge movement and mobility around the opposition team. How do you track them down? Because you're able to ping the ball. I mean, Brian's on the show here, no better man that can pick he can pick a pass 40, 50, 60 metres easily. You simply cannot leave, players off like that. So you may very well be attacking yourself, and the ball is turned over. Now you're in the defensive mode. Mentally, how quick are you to get into that mode? And who are you going to close down here? It may not be your own man. So that quickness in transition from being an offensive team, attacking team, to being a defensive team, and you're going to do that 300 or 400 times in the match. I think that's where the real coaching and that's where the real game planning is. Yeah, no, it definitely is. Who do we fancy in this one then, lads, just to finish it up? Cheddar, I'll start with you. I think, look, the game's in Wexford Park. I think it is important to Wexford on the assumption that they have players back and that those players back are, good to go. I'd like to see a little bit more evidence about Galway. I just don't judge last Sundays to a great extent. I thought they were put under pressure by a team that proved in the second half not to be really up for the fight. And if that was the case, I'd be a little bit concerned about that. And I think Wexford are in their own park, or in their own support. And I think Davy will see this. Let's get one over Galway. This has served Davy well. And incidentally, Wooly, he's been a vilified person by enough people, so let's compliment him here, because Brian used a very, very good word, the evolution of hurling. Nobody has done it better or done it more than Davy, and fair play to you, Davy, and I certainly will compliment you on that. But one other thing has served him well. I think he's beaten Kilkenny 5 times out of 6 now. I can't remember the statistic, but that's important to him in terms of self-confidence and self-belief in Wexford against a team that traditionally would have been a challenger to them, and surely Galway are serious challengers for Leinster and for All Ireland, and what better way of just keeping them down than to beat them again next Sunday. So I'm just going to give Wexford a hesitant vote, but it's qualified a little bit by that they have their proper team in the field. Right, Brian, what do you think?
Exact same, have to agree. Every single point on that. I'd go with Wexford too, considering that they have all those best players available to them. They mightn't see out the game. I think that's one thing that Davey has clearly worked on over the last couple of years, is trying to strengthen his panel in terms of having a 20-man team, and players come on and they're very, they're not letting the tempo drop, that kind of way, and very used to the system that they play. And I think he's certainly a long way down the road to achieving that. And I think that's what makes Wexford so dangerous at the moment. David didn't like it when I said it last year, but he's a terrific competitor and he wants to win every single game, and particularly at home. And I think he'll go for this bald-headed. Galway still have a little bit to learn. as a collective under Shane O'Neill. So it is a big test for them down there, and that's why I said I think they're very happy to go down there and actually learn from this. So yeah, I'd be the same as Cheddar. I'd definitely pick Wexford on this one.
All right, okay. I don't know who to pick, so I'm just not going to pick anybody here. So we'll come.
And will you just throw in one other point? In hindsight, Wexford must be absolutely kicking themselves that had a great chance of winning an All-Ireland. Absolutely kicking themselves. And if that hunger is still there and they can get all of those parts together, and this is nothing to do with Davy, this is intrinsic within Wexford players themselves. They've won an All-Ireland in '96, and they haven't, even though they're a huge hurling county with a huge support, but they haven't won a huge amount of All-Irelands considering the heritage that they have. So this is not going to happen for them every year. Although I spoke here last week, Wexford 365 will guarantee, it's a development plan of Wexford, will guarantee that they're going to be at the top of the tree here for a long number of years to come. But they haven't. And if they can maintain that hunger and just, I suppose, use that to drive themselves on, we were close, but look, close does nothing for you. We've got to go away and do it all again. If they have that hunger and they decide next Sunday that, look, let's make a mark on this game, because these boys are, we're going to be taking on these boys in the summer again. Let's keep them down here, which I think is what Davy has really said to him in comparison to when they're dealing with Kilkenny. And I think that might be a point that might tell for Wexford as well. That type of hunger.
Okay, great stuff. We'll come back and we'll talk about Kilkenny and Waterford. All right, Kilkenny, Waterford. Brian, you're doing co-com for RT on this one. This is a local derby. The big news is that the Ballyhale Shamrocks lads, TJ, Joey Holden, I think he was on the bench, Colin Fennelly are all going to be back. I think Joey was on the bench for the last one. Kilkenny at full strength, amazingly, outside of Adrian Mullen.
Yeah, and it's a fixture that both teams love. There's a great rivalry down there, a real healthy kind of respect between the two of them, even though they're obviously on the border. I suppose they don't come across each other that often, but they love to play against each other, whether it's in Walsh Park or in Nolan Park. And I think both teams would be really looking forward to that. Particularly those Ballyhale players, so that's why they'll be mad to get back in, and they're obviously geographically close enough to Waterford, so they'll be mad to get involved. But Waterford under Cal now, under Liam Cal, they'll be really up for this type of fight. He made changes last week in terms of his giving probably a run to some of his panel to see how they would deal with the All-Ireland champion or All-Ireland or league winner, Limerick, the team to beat really. And he was very honest in his analysis of the game afterwards, and literally just said that Limerick were just a step ahead of them, and while they only won by a few points, it was almost a comprehensive win. It was, yeah. And I suppose the big thing from that is that they probably learned a huge amount from the way that Limerick play. So it's interesting times for Liam Cahill. He certainly set out his stall. He's not in terms of he's not afraid of names. Players have to earn their right to get a jersey, so there's no one coming into that Waterford setup, no matter what they've done in the past, they have to earn that right to get a jersey, and that will come through hard work, I think, first and foremost. And I know it's a given, and Cheddar kind of said that earlier, and hunger and all that sort of thing, but you have to still get it out of players, and I think Liam Call's a long way down the path of actually achieving that, and I think he has set his stall out early in that, and we're starting to see that in players, and that's a lot easier said than done.
I looked at Waterford against Limerick, Cheddar, and the way you watch Galway and you can see what they're trying to do. And I'm not a hurling analyst, but you can see a pattern in their play. You look at Limerick and you can tell after watching two games you can see them practicing what their game plan is and phases of play. You look at Wexford, might take you a bit longer to figure out what they're trying to do, but then you can see, I look at Waterford and I don't see any pattern of play. I see huge endeavour. I see lads trying hard, but I don't see a defined game plan. I see Jamie Byrne taking off on a solo run. You see, Prendergast taking off on a solo run. You see whoever gets on the ball, Montgomery going off on a solo run, whoever's there. But you don't see what the actual plan is, or am I missing something there? I know they didn't have a full team out against Limerick, but what are they working towards, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that, Wally.
Here we go, I'm retiring now, that's it.
I haven't seen enough of them. I haven't really seen enough of them, I suppose. But I wouldn't be surprised if Liam, maybe decided to take this in steps, to get the work rate as Brian was saying, and that real level of effort and that cohesion in effort, working for one another and covering for one another and so on, so on. Maybe just to take it in small bites. Let's get this thing right first, You don't know he's thinking behind these things, because he left a few players off the team that he has made some statements about that he had a clear vision of what the type of team he wanted, and in saying that, he's also saying that the players he left off were left off for that reason. I'm presuming, so it may very well be that he's just maybe step one along the way he wants Waterford to play. But I think he needs to find that pretty quickly, because you only get your first chance to impress here, and he's going to go into a Munster Championship. And if you don't have some idea the way you play in the modern game, I don't want to call it a modern game because it's just a game. If you don't have some method of play, it's difficult to see how you're going to take down the likes of Limerick, Tipperary, Cork, and Clare. It is a dogfight. It's a bear pit down there in Munster, as it is in Leinster. I'll say. We've said this over the last number of years that it's really looking forward to the championship. It is going to be neck and neck, dog eat dog here, and it is going to be that in both provinces. But we're just talking about Waterford at the minute, and I think. All of the things that Liam has said, is he's talking about Sunday, that's a do or die game, and a good test of where we are at. All of these utterances so far have been very much around that, the effort, and that without a huge amount of the setup and the way they play and the method of play and the way they transfer a ball and all of that. So I think he's going to have to give some time to that soon to get a method of play that suits his players and that suits Waterford and that. And I think the crucial part of that for him is there's certainly a lot of very, very good players. He has a really, really good panel available to him here, but just getting the right type of scoring threat and the right type of scoring forwards in place. And like a lot of these players, Curran and some of these have been tried before, but it's going to be interesting to see the likes of, say, Desi Hutchinson and some of those players. He had a few more new ones again, as you said, Wooly, last weekend, but have the ability to be able to step up in white heated championship and, influence the game seriously for your team. That's going to be the question, and probably I think this Sunday is really, really important to him for that, because clearly Brian has expressed it well. A huge amount of South Kilkenny people work in Waterford, and there is a great healthy rivalry there because they're in different provinces. They don't meet that often, so that rivalry is not, maybe it's not bitter, it's healthy, I would call it. And the game's in Nolan Park. It is going to be a great test, but I think it's going to be a test really. You just take it for granted that at intercounty level, where Waterford is, that the level of effort and fight and all of those things it's just going to be top notch. If it isn't, there's something seriously wrong. And it's the creativity within the team and how you play and all of that I think will be interesting. And there's no better team to test that than Kilkenny. And we've said this number 4. They're tackling their ferocious fight to win possession and to win back possession and all of that will test an awful lot of things to do with your team. And I think it is going to be a very, very interesting game. There's no doubt. And taking, as you said, at Kilkenny have some players coming back that are serious heavy hitters here. And if they are back and if they're right, it's going to be I think it's going to be a fantastic game.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tough day at the office for Waterford.
Sorry, Willie, one other thing you got to bear in mind: Waterford were in a league final last year. We sort of forget that. Yeah. And they underperformed when it came to the championship after that. But no team gets to a league final without serious credentials. And, they have it. And it's a matter of getting the right parts of the jigsaw right. And, of course, getting that motivation and all of those things right. But they have some serious players.
They have some serious players. But here's the thing, Brian. Do they have a full forward line that's going to put fear into the opposition? Patrick Curran, unfortunately, a great underage player, but probably consistently hasn't done it. Desi Hutchinson hasn't had an unbelievable league. He's been injured the last game, but I think he will be a summertime player. Stephen Bennett, he looks like he's their marquee forward now. He scored 3 from play against Cork, 2 against Limerick, 1 against Galway, and he got 1-1 against Tip. That's not Shamie Callanan kind of, I know it's not unfair to compare him to Shamie Callanan, but you get me, your heavy hitter in the full forward line wants to be racking up a bit more than that. So who are their ball winning half forwards? Like, do they have any big physical players in the half-forward line? They all seem to be small little fellas. I don't know, I think Waterford are in bother for personnel, because when he played Austin Gleeson, he played him centre-back. Kevin Moran's in the back line. You'd think that the two of them would be two good ball-winning half-forwards. I see them in a league quarter-final, and I don't know, you just don't see where they're going at all.
Look, I suppose a little
Am I
bit
being
of balance.
overly harsh here?
Yeah, look, I think a little bit of balance on that is probably needed, being honest. You have to give them credit. They won a couple of really tight games against Cork and Galway at home. They were down to 13 men. Okay, it was 13 against 14 against Tipperary. They put in a hugely brave performance that day. And they ran Tipperary close. Limerick, okay, hurling-wise, they beat them probably comprehensively, but still there was only 4 points in it. So that shows the endeavour that's there at the moment. I think the two things that stand out for me with Waterford at the moment is that Cal has done. Number one is that work rate, and as I said, he's not afraid to leave big names off, and he's forcing them to hit the wine the road. If you want to go the easy path, well, you're not for me. But if you want to roll up your sleeves and work your arse off and do whatever it takes, well then come on board. So he's not afraid to make those decisions, and that's tough. That's very, very brave in his perspective, but he's willing to do that. The other thing I've seen that stands out is that they're clearly trying to work goals as well. If they get a ball, they're putting their head down and they're absolutely going ball-headed for that goal. It's not always working out. Sometimes that does come down to the quality of the player that you're talking about, those real marquee forwards. But I can definitely see a clear pattern there that they're putting their head down and trying to go for goals. And they're seeing the importance of trying to get goals, because they have not worked those opportunities over the last couple of years. So that is important. But you're right, it's hard to see how, when you pair it all back and you look for like with like, how they actually stack up against maybe the top intercounty teams here at the moment. And results have shown that over the last couple of years, and that opens up a completely different argument. They have not won a game in Munster since it's been changed around, so it's a big, big year for them in terms of that Munster Championship, and they have to get a win out of somewhere. And I suppose I hate, look, it sounds like we're always agreeing with each other, but I think Cheddar hit it in nail on the head. It looks like Liam Cahill has set out his overall plan with Waterford in steps. First and foremost is that honesty of effort, and within that, then when he has got that and got real honest players on the field, that he can bring in his game plan or evolve that game plan as he goes forward.
Okay, right, Brian, we'll let you go there, and thanks very much.
No worries, lads. Thanks a million. Talk soon.
Cheddar, but at the same time, can you not instill honesty of effort into a team as well as something else? Do you know what I mean? Why does it have to be one or the other? Or why do you need to go in phases? It's a long year.
No, that is interesting. And even the fact, William, there's another discussion around, players that don't have honesty of effort. Can you get inside their heads to change them rather than just discarding them? So there's lots of discussions around that. Either one could work. There's no guarantee in either of them. But you would probably say that the really, really great motivational managers can get inside people's heads and, get them to change their behaviours to play in a different way, or to do the things that is going to improve them as players and that. And at the end of the day, that you're a manager, that's what you're there for, to improve players and to improve your team to go away and win something. But I don't want to miss the point either that sometimes you do need to make statements here. And clearly Liam, I think he actually said that this was based on the previous years. I think it was one of his comments. So clearly he either knew something, or his management team knew something within the fabric of the team that needed to be changed, that needed sort of surgical work on it, and he has certainly done that. But I suppose the results of all of that will really be in the performance, particularly in the Munster Championship and that. I suppose I just would worry a little bit about that, Willie, about that whole forward division, and first of all, the incisiveness of their players, in the real top games. I think they've got working forwards and that, but you need a little bit more now in Munster at the minute. Look at the level that you're taking on. You're taking on the All-Ireland champions, the league champions. and as the lads said about Cork, or mushrooms, they could come any year, they can do anything. I know Clare under Brian will be difficult to beat as well. So it's not that you have a chance here to find things out. And you know, Waterford public will be unforgiving for Liam Cahill if they go the same way. They won a league last year and didn't perform in their first match, and then just couldn't grab the motivation within the team to really drive and go at this again. And
they were in a league final, you mean?
And in a league final, and that could happen, quite easily again. And you know, like this is not a Waterford team that's just after coming out of minor under 21. They're absolutely at the peak of their power. If it doesn't happen for them now, you'd be a little bit concerned about that. And I just go back to that point. I suppose if you had a TJ or a Pat Horgan in that team, that's a very, very efficient and a very, very effective forward. Even one. Pádraig Mahony's fantastic on frees and all of that, but he's just not that player that you would need to double team, for example. And I think if they had that, and I don't see it in as a minute. I mean, a lot of the players have been tried around that before, and clearly Liam is trying for some new players at the minute. And I think that's why, Wooly, the system of play is so important, because you cannot rely on 2 or 3 players, the likes of John McGrath, with very little possession, that can come away with 3 or 4 points a match, or 1-3 a match, which he regularly does out of very little possession. In terms of efficiencies and shot efficiency and creativity and all of those things, they're on a completely different level. So a method of play for Tipperary isn't as important as I see it for Waterford. And that's why I didn't sort of, I suppose, elucidate on the point, Wooly, about when you mentioned the point originally about the way Waterford play. It is crucial to them. And look, would Limerick have won an All-Ireland, or even got near it, without the method that they employed for that, and have employed since? And, so it is, I think it's crucial for Waterford if they got that right. And I would think that, I think that's all Liam is going to be looking at. Michael Beavens. Michael Beavens is a very, very good coach. And you can bear in mind where Liam and Michael have come from. They've coached minor and under 21 for Tip. But generally speaking, minor and under 21, they're a very, very different game. It's exactly that. It's based nearly 15 on 15. You don't play a huge amount of tactical hurling, because they're just not at that maturity level. And, if you see All-Ireland minors, you're very, very rarely going to see. Now, you may see this in the future, and maybe in the last couple of years, but certainly over a long number of years, it's very much 15 versus 15, and you win your position and that. It's a very, very different game. So I think that's the real challenge for Liam and for Michael here, is looking at the method of play to suit their team, but I think they need to find it very, very quickly.
Yeah, no, exactly. Just to be fair to Liam Cahill a bit, Jake Dillon is back. Kieran Bennett has been out, he's back. Desi Hutchinson's back for this weekend. Dara Fives, Austin Gleeson, Kevin Moran. Yeah. So this weekend we could see him with the team that he has in mind for the championship, and we might see something, about what they're working on, because it is difficult when you have a patchwork team, and we know that Waterford don't have the squad that other teams have, so they're 6, 7, 8 outside their starting 15 wouldn't be as good as the Tip or the Limericks, for example.
I would agree with that. I mean, Ozzy and some of those players they're just top drawer players.
But they need to beef up their forward line, like they do. They need to play
That's the point. That's the issue I'm sort of looking for. And look, you may very well, make a really, really good scoring forward out of a player like that. But Kevin Moran is also a fantastic half back. But even just looking at that, I mean, how they used Ozzy in previous times in terms of coming from deep and running through the defence, you need to see something like that. They need to bring something different to their game here to use their strength when you don't have that real type of incisive, effective, efficient forward that I've said a minute ago.
Yeah, exactly. Liam Cahill has said we'll be going with real purpose next weekend. So there's a statement that, this is it, pretty much. The shadow boxing's over. We'll be going with real purpose, and that's against Kilkenny. So we'll definitely see what Waterford are really made of this weekend. I presume you're going for Kilkenny. Is the smart money's there anyways? That's right.
I know, I think so, yeah.
I'm not afraid to put my neck on the line here.
It's in Nolan Park as well, and Brian won't allow anybody into Nolan Park and go away with a win. And I think I've seen some of the Kilkenny games, Wooly, and I thought they played very well in parts of that. Even with not full teams as such, although I'm not too sure there's ever such a thing as not a full Kilkenny team. But I thought they played some good hurling. They're definitely changing. Their use of the ball is a little bit different. I think Brian obviously will want to win it and get another game, because I think he just needs to get two things. He needs to integrate the TJs and the Collins and this into the team and get everybody else playing around him and playing sort of to the one level. But he also needs to integrate maybe one or two new players that he's sort of looking at the minute. And of course, there's no better way of doing that than playing really testing matches, testing these players. Do they have the ability on the big day to be able to deliver the performance? And I think he's going to be. Brian won't be saying that. He won't be vocal about that. In terms of the way I think Liam has said it, that he's this is do or die. You probably won't hear Brian saying that. But mark my words, that dressing room will be no different. It will be do or die.
Brilliant stuff, Cheddar. Thanks very much. We'll be back on Monday. That's if the games go ahead. We'll keep updated as the day goes on. And we'll see what happens. We'll be back Monday if the games go ahead. We'll talk to you then. Good luck.